This episode is part of Lanfrica Talks. Lanfrica Talks provides a platform to showcase efforts in language technologies around the world. To learn more or attend our live sessions, see the description below.
Good day, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Lanfrica Talks. Today, we're excited to host Babs AI, and the founder Temi will be talking to us about this cutting edge technology that he's developing and his company's developing. Temi is a software engineer with over 6 years of experience building NLP products. He's currently working on Babs, which is an AI powered virtual assistant that is accessible from anywhere. And with that, I'm very excited to hear what you have to say, Temi, and the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you, Chris. Hi, everyone. Chris has done the introduction. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me. As Chris said, my name is Temi. I've been working in software for a while, and we started Babs as a way to bring people closer to artificial intelligence as people move closer to artificial intelligence, as AI comes closer to humans. So what problem are we solving here? I'm sure a lot of us have interacted with some chatbots at some point in time. And if we're being honest, those things don't really work well. I'm sure if you reach out to some customer support and you find out that you're interacting with a chatbot as opposed to a human, you immediately become dissatisfied because you do not trust that your problem would be resolved, right? And you could tie that to two major issues. You could attribute that to two things. Number one, these chatbots don't really work because they do not take actions, right? Prior to ChatGPT plugins, there weren't a lot of chat services that integrated with some back end to get something done on behalf of the user. And because they do not take actions, they do not feel very much like assistants, right? And so before ChatGPT plugins, we've been working to integrate chatbots with backend services, and that's one problem that we're solving. The second thing is most chat services are built with businesses in mind. So a chatbot startup or a customer support service startup approaches a business and they say, look, we're going to help your customers interact with you, help your customers answer questions, but it's optimized for the business. And there's something lost there, which is personalization. The assistant that the end user, the customer talks to does not know anything about that customer, right? It's a new person to them, and then it doesn't understand where the end user is coming from. Also, the businesses and the customers know each other, but the man in the middle, which is a virtual assistant, does not understand who that end user is, has only a vague knowledge of that user. And so we have this situation where personalization is lost. And what that leads to is bad customer experience. So our goal is to start from the end user, fix the personalization issues, and then work our way up to businesses. I think the end users would have more, by end users, I mean individuals, would have more, a more personal experience, which gives value to both them and the businesses. So this is the idea that we this is the idea that we're working with, the framework with which we think about our business and our products. The third thing is vendor lock. So you think about the virtual assistants that we have in the market, and putting ChatGPT aside, we have Siri, we have Google Assistant, and the rest. And frankly, many of them just tie you into their own ecosystem, right? And it's not very easy for Siri to interact fully or integrate fully with your Google, say Google Drive, for example. And that's something we're looking to work on. We have different ecosystems, Apple, Siri, Microsoft, and we see that as time goes on, as AI advances, they tend to become less and less generous with their data and their backend services. So you have Google working on AI for their own workspace. Microsoft announced Microsoft's Copilot for Microsoft 365. I'm sure Apple is not going to sit down and not do anything, but our goal is to take people outside of these ecosystems. Who's taking care of the people of businesses who are not Microsoft or Google or Apple? So these are the things that drive our product development. And so what we're building is an AI-powered chat assistant that has three major things at its core. You can integrate it with your applications that you use every day: calendar, mail, notes. You can reach it from anywhere. We currently have integrations for WhatsApp, Slack, iMessage, and Telegram. And it's heavily personalized. It's highly personalized. It's highly customizable. So you could configure the assistant to send you notifications at certain periods of time. You could disable notifications. So that level of customization gives you greater control over how the assistant behaves towards you and how you interact with the assistant. So we have a few use cases. Let's just start with how you would interact with our assistant. It's as simple as you go to babs.ai, you log in, and you connect a channel. A channel is basically how you interact with the assistant. We currently have support for text, WhatsApp, iMessage, Slack, and Telegram, like I mentioned. We're going to have support for voice very soon. Once you connect a channel, you then optionally connect your applications. Applications could be Google Calendar, your Notion, or your Google Mail, and then you just start to chat the assistant. We're going to have support for documents, so you could upload documents and ask questions about certain topics. You could think of yourself as a student, for example. You're a student and you have this big or large PDF that you need to read through, or even it could be small, it could be large. You just need to understand that document or get a summarization of it, or pick out some bullet points from that document. It's as easy as uploading and chatting the assistant from WhatsApp like you would. So you don't even have to have the file on hand. Things like that are what helps our users be more productive with their day. So you can see the sample here. The person connected iMessage, and then they connected their Google Calendar, and then they ask, "Oh, what's on my schedule for today?" And you could say, for example, invite Chris for lunch at 2 p.m. tomorrow, right? And you enter Chris's email, and that event is set up for you. Chris gets the invitation, and it's just a really smooth process, right? And without having to open so many applications to get things done, open your calendar and things like that, you could do it from chat as long as the application is integrated. So here are sample use cases. You connect your mail, summarize the email, and you get the notification in iMessage. It's like an assistant. Think about if you had a human personal assistant. That person would let you know when you have important messages coming in, will let you know when it's time it's time for a meeting, will let you know when a huge event is coming up, things like that. So the first use case here is an email. You get a new email, it's important. Assistant summarizes it for you, probably because it's very long, and sends it to you in your channel. So you connected iMessage, right? Second use case, you can set reminders. You could say, remind me to call Jen at 3 p.m. Now it's 3 p.m. You get a WhatsApp notification telling you, hey, it's time to do this. And the idea is not that you would leave your default reminder on your app. No, it's that you're already in iMessage, or you're already in WhatsApp in this case, talking to someone, and then you remember that you need to do something. You do not need to leave the app. You do not need to leave WhatsApp that you're already using. You could just navigate to the chat with your assistant and just ask it to remind you about that thing. And we're extending our work on reminders. We're doing reminders for more big picture type of things. So you could say, oh, I'm thinking about a project, I'm thinking about this idea for some research work or a paper. I think that there's a better way that we can handle, let's say, some loss function. And then 2 weeks later, you remember this thing, but you don't quite remember all the details. You could ask the assistant and say, hey, what was that thing I told you about loss functions 2 weeks ago? And then you can have this conversation with the assistant about it. Third use case, you connect your calendar, you check your calendar, and you see that you have a meeting with Chris at 3. The assistant tells you that, and then you say, okay, cancel brunch, and then you see that the event has been canceled. So this is just like an example workflow from looking and identifying events that you have for your day, and looking at, okay, this is what needs to change about that. We also have support for editing events. So you could say, move that meeting to 4 p.m. or something like that. So there's so many use cases, and we're improving on them every day. And yeah, so these are the use cases. And so the good question is, well, how do we build these things? What are the tools that we brought together to build these products? And so I broke them down into 3 different categories. We have the language model, of course, these things work with language models. And we have integrations and tooling, and we have infra, right? So I'll start from the language model. We all know how expensive it is to build and scale a large language model, even not just a large language model, but any model in general, especially when your product is free, mostly. So you want to, as much as possible, start from the very top layer, right? You want to handle, or you want to solve the problem from like the topmost layer, and then over time, as your business gets bigger, you want to then start to think about, okay, how can I vertically integrate and build our own, custom solution to meet this need. But so right now we're starting with integration with OpenAI tools. We have some models internally that we use for sentiment analysis and classification and understanding the feedback that we get from customers. Those are different, but the core language model comes from OpenAI. GPT we use a couple of variations, the chat model and the GPT-4 API. So as I mean, everyone here knows there's high performance. The OpenAI models have high performance, especially the language models. I mean, there are a few errors and there are a few things that need to be worked on, but we'll get to that, especially with African languages, but we'll get to that later. Integrations and tooling. We have integrations with Google Calendar and Mail, and we use OAuth 2 specifically to ensure that users grant us permission to these to their tools, so that we're on the safe side, users on the safe side, and that whole authorization process is well managed. And we also have support for Notion, which we're bringing in about the end of this week. And we have LangChain. I'm sure everyone in this on this meeting has heard about LangChain. LangChain is a Python and recently JavaScript tool that you use to string models together. The chain comes from you building these things called chains, so you can integrate your backend systems with your large language models from anywhere, including Anthropic, OpenAI, even your custom large language models. And it's highly configurable and integrates with most already existing tools. And then we go to infra. Most applications run in the cloud, and we have because we have high input-output operations. We need something that supports that kind of input-output operation. So we use Redis as for most things that the user has to get almost immediately, for most things that we have to fetch immediately. And then for for things that need to stay, that could wait a bit longer, we store in SQL DBs, as most businesses do. And so coming to African languages, a couple of our users and people who have worked with large language models have talked about the issues that they encounter when they use, for example, GPT-4. Well, prior to that, GPT 3.5 and ChatGPT. While a lot of data, or while a lot of effort was put into supporting major languages, or at least maybe that's an emergent property, there seems to be very little support for low resource languages. I personally have experienced a situation where ChatGPT got wrong I think it was trending on Twitter a few weeks ago. So for people who are Yoruba people here, there is a word called ayan, which means cockroach in English. So someone asked, what does cockroach mean in Yoruba? What's cockroach in Yoruba? And with all the trials, ChatGPT didn't give a good answer. It never got it right. And so we see that there's still a large gap here with large language models. And while we know that work is going on in this direction, we are doing our best while going about our daily business to ensure that we support large language models for African languages and for the African community. So some of the things that we're doing. I had a conversation with Chris a few weeks back about how we could possibly, re-strategize around how we think about large language models for African languages, and how we could partner with other research communities to, solve many of these gaps, right? Solve these issues that are existing here. And those things would include things like getting data collation. I think that's first of all, that's a major problem, major challenge that most researchers have with African languages. It's that there just isn't a lot of them around. So getting anonymized data in this for these use cases would really help the community, and really help progress and efforts in this regard. Support for voice also. If you have used tools like Whisper, or if you have used any of the voice AI tools, even the ones that are publicly available already, like Speechelo, you would see that they have very little support for African languages. Now, there are a lot of African startups that are doing quite some good work in this area, but I think that if more data was given to these people, if we had access to more data, it would really help the community. So we need some way to get and collect data with respect to voice and text. Compute. I'm sure people know here, NVIDIA has been doing a lot of work trying to partner with African startups. They have a program called NVIDIA Inception Program. Yes, that's it. And so what they do is you join the program as a startup, and you get access to some of the tooling for NVIDIA, including cloud GPUs, including credits, including even documentation and learning resources for CUDA and for all the tools across NVIDIA. So I think that's a step in the right direction. We currently got some credits for. We recently got some credits for the NVIDIA Inception program. So we're excited about that. And so that brings to the third thing. You have these hardware. You have access to, minimal resources. What do you do with that? You go into modeling and research and RLHF, which seems to be the go-to strategy for training large language models, or like fine-tuning them for to align them with our own what we really want as humans, right? And so this is how we think about, yes, let's put in human efforts. This requires a lot of human interactions, a lot of human input, right? And so we are working with a team. There's an MLOps African team that's doing a couple of events and hackathons just to raise awareness for the AI community, just to let people know that things can happen here and a lot is going on here. We could share more details later, but there are events coming up like Oscar Fest and Data Fest. These are events that happen. We're thinking about introducing some hackathons there, which would bring a lot of talents to limelight and which would also create awareness. And I think that this is a very good step and an important step in the right direction. I know a lot of people know this already, but Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, mentioned recently that he will be visiting Lagos on his tour of developer communities and research communities in all over the world. So he's visiting a few places, and one of those places is Lagos. And I think that's a really, really strategic move from OpenAI. I think it also helps the African community to showcase talent and let the world know that something good, something great is happening here. So around that period, we're thinking of organizing hackathons and events that that would do exactly these. And so I'll just touch briefly on what we're thinking about for the future and how we think much long-term about Babs and the work that we're doing. So you take a look at current solutions for personal assistants, you find that many of them already offer value to users, right? And as time goes on, you see that there are advances in how that value is offered. Recently, about 2 weeks ago, someone called Yohai released AutoGPT. AutoGPT is like ChatGPT on steroids, right? So it interacts with tools and it basically uses the outputs that it gets from these tools to prompt itself again and figures out what the next thing is to do. So you could give it like a goal, say, make money for me and set up a business and things like that. And as long as it can find an API around it to get that thing done, it would basically get that thing done. I tried it one time and it started to just write some code from scratch. And I had to shut it down because it was using a lot of resources. But it was really fascinating to think about how much progress the research community has done. I think we should really, first of all, before I move on, I think we should really thank the research community for the really good work. I don't think the research community gets their flowers. Many people praise the engineers and the people who build tools around large language models, but I don't think any of it would have happened without transformers, without generative pre-trained transformers. And there are researchers here, there are PhD people here. I'd like to say thank you. Thank you very much. So on the future of things, product-wise, we're thinking about teams, support for teams to help people collaborate more with virtual assistants. Think about the virtual assistants that can play the role of a human personal assistant for the whole team, as opposed to a personal assistant for an individual. And I think this would really improve collaboration. Collaboration is something that businesses care about a lot and something that boosts productivity teams. And the second thing we're looking at is customer support. I mentioned earlier how a lot of chatbot businesses and customer support services work from businesses to the end user. We're thinking about working from the other way around, from the end user, working on personalization and fixing the issues with personalization, and then probably approaching businesses from there or reaching businesses from there. I think that makes more both product and business sense. And the third thing we're looking at is developer support and integrations. We've all heard about ChatGPT plugins, and ChatGPT plugins are a huge leap in integration of or bringing humans and personal AIs together. And it's a really huge leap because it helps humans interact with these chatbots, which have integrations with their already existing apps that they use every day. And so one could really think about how this supercharges the workflow of individuals and of teams, right? And so that's something that we're looking at much, long term. And the final thing on this list is the most personal operating system. Something that happens when new technologies take over is that there is an emergent property that is an emergent result that most people typically do not expect to happen. Same thing appears to happen with tools like ChatGPT. We have this thing that does a lot of things that look intelligent and seem intelligent. And as we all know, it's based on next token prediction type of architecture, right? And while that may look simple to researchers and to people who are building these large language models and who are doing really good work on them, we tend to miss what emerges out of it, right? Which is that to the layman, or to the people who just build tools around it, like me, there seems to be this emergence of something that looks like intelligence, right? We're not saying that it's full-blown intelligence, but we can see that this thing happens to fulfill a need. And that emergence is something that I wouldn't take for granted. I wouldn't take for granted at all. And so I think on another level, there is this emergence of something else that seems to be emerging. This emergence of an operating system, something that seems to be coming up lately. I saw recently that OpenAI was looking for iOS engineers, and then I started to think, why would they? And you could think that, yes, OpenAI is looking for iOS engineers because they want to build their own mobile app, right? And when they build their own mobile app that can connect with all apps that users have already on their mobile devices, you can think about how much of a leap that would be in terms of innovation and in terms of how much users can do in a short period of time. You could have agents that just interact via agents that just interact with OpenAI's backend to know what needs to be done based on the context of the conversation, or even based on a running agent. It's just an agent that's just running and just figuring out what to do for the user, right? And just interacting with all the applications, getting feedback from the different APIs, and figuring out what's the next thing to do. Also putting into consideration the user's preferences. And you see that something on top of that is like an operating system, right? There is one operating system recently that was released. I think it's based on voice. I do not remember the name. I'll try to remember it. But it's based on voice, and you could interact with it, open files, get things done, and it just executes really smoothly. It works on top of other operating systems, but you could see that this is something that could extend beyond the confined spaces or the confined ecosystems that already exist. So these are the directions in which we are thinking about what the future of personal assistants look like and what the future of Babs looks like. And with this, I think that we have come to the end of this.
Okay, thank you so much, Temi, for this
Thank you.
presentation about Babs AI. That's wonderful work that you're doing, and really looking forward to your progress and how far things go with what you're doing. Thank you to
thank
the
you very much.
audience for coming, and I hope it was a fruitful event for you as it was for me. And have a great day, and see you all for our next Lanfrica Talks. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.